Our Seattle Seahawks fall to the Carolina Panthers today, 30-24, in a pretty miserable game all the way around. This is truly a game where you can pass out the blame in a variety of different areas, and everyone can kind of take their share of it. Harder to apply this to just one side of the ball or the other. I think I lead in this game, though, with saying we've got to itemize what is at the head of the table here as far as the problems go. And for me, that begins with the defense. You once again allowed yourselves to get whooped up at the line of scrimmage, play in and play out in this game against the Carolina Panthers. You had no answers for them. You had no adjustments for them. You just stepped into your same old defense that you've been running this whole year, and you let them run the ball right down your throats. There was even a moment in this game where you had a 3rd and 10 early on in this game, and you let them run for 10 yards on a 3rd and 10. It was just kind of miserable all the way around. 46 attempts, 223 yards on the ground. They did kind of get things stopped up about midway through the game a little bit, but then it quickly fell back apart as we got into the fourth quarter. It has been odd to see a defense where Coach Carroll says my defense should start from two things. First, stopping the big play and stopping the run. He's not stopping the run, though. They're still preventing the big play, and they seemed mighty obsessed with stopping that big play today. Because when you watch the Seahawks and the zone coverages they were running, it was a lot of very deep zones, a lot of let's protect against the deep ball. And I don't know about you folks out there, but I didn't walk into this game against Sam Darnold saying, you know what we got to do? We got to protect ourselves against Sam Darnold's deep ball. You know, you got to watch yourself against the big arm of Sam Darnold. That's where he gets you. Instead, what the Seattle Seahawks did is they did just that. And then they allowed it to be made easy for Darnold, because when they weren't able to stop the run, then they had to commit a lot of resources to stopping the run, which then meant those bootlegs and those easy throws out in space for Sam Darnold were there all day long. And you let the guy dink and dunk you to a 5-yard average per attempt day where you just didn't have to make him feel like he was challenged. You didn't have to force him into a corner and make him throw down the field and push the ball up the football field. And instead, you kind of let him get off the hook. And you let them get off the hook easily by letting them run so consistently through this game. I have never really seen a Coach Carroll teams get run on this year as much as we've been run on. And it comes back again to still more of those two-man fronts with the two outside linebackers on the other side of them, creating these gaping holes in the running game. That's part of it. They don't have very good gap integrity in their 3-4 as well. That's another part of it. But it quite simply comes down to what you're doing defensively this year. Outside of changing to the 3-4 defense is a lot of what you've done in the last few years. I don't know why they're not looking to make changes or adjustments to this defense. I don't know why when your defense is struggling to create much pass rush or you can't stop the run, you won't dedicate more resources to doing that. The only thing that I can fall back on is that Carroll was unwilling to do that because that comes at the sacrifice of potentially giving up the big play, which is where he first and foremost starts from saying, no, I will not go down that lane. I might give up some in the run game, but I will not give up the deep pass play. It's driving me a little bit crazy because it's definitely holding back our defense. Most defenses in the modern age will play with a little bit of aggressiveness from time to time. Our defense seems to be playing on its heels more often than not. It seems to be happy to let offenses take it to them rather than they take it to the opposition's offenses. Tough to see. And again, they did find some adjustments midway through this game where things started to hold down. They kept Carolina at 20 points for a large part of this game. So they did find some adjustments, I guess. But at the end of the day, Carolina wasn't doing a lot of extravagant things offensively. They were running the ball down your throat, and they knew they eventually could break you, and that's just what they did. But this is not a game that's just to be parsed out to the defensive side of the ball as solely only the blame. Certainly the offense has to take their share of the brunt on this as well. If the Carolina Panthers were able to run, your Seahawks weren't able to run at all. This game, you had Travis Homer coming into this. Of course, you were down Rashad Penny. You're down Kenneth Walker. You're down DJ Dallas. You're to your fourth running back, and it very much looked like you were down to your fourth running back in this game. Travis didn't run bad per se, but there were just no holes, and he wasn't able to get much extra like Kenneth Walker's able to do, even when there isn't something there. He's going to get what is there. And unfortunately, this offensive line right now cannot generate any holes in the running game. We have seen this going on now 4 straight weeks, where not only are they not generating any holes in the running game, they're allowing penetration. They're allowing negative yard plays. And you're seeing too many of those on these running plays. And so then that becomes the offense all about throwing the football with Geno Smith. And so the lack of running for 4 weeks is really, I think, where a lot of the offensive struggles come back out of, including Geno's struggles today, because I do believe Geno probably had his worst game of the year this year in this particular game. But I do think it's born out of the fact that you're asking Geno to throw 72% of the time as you did in this game. You're asking him throughout the year to throw at 55, 60% of the time. And you're not doing that just because you're so dynamic in your passing attack. You're doing this because you have no running game. You're doing this at times because you have to put so many points on the board to kind of keep pace with what's going on the defensive side of the ball. And not having the running game as they did is rough. That part was tough, but I do think that it bears into some of the errors that you see from Geno. It's not to let him off the hook. He did have a couple of interceptions in this game. He didn't look as comfortable in his decision-making. He didn't look as certain where he wanted to go with the ball. There was times where he was a little bit confused. Again, I can completely those out there say that Geno had his worst game of the year. I think there's some validity behind that, and I wouldn't try to necessarily completely kneecap that. I think Geno didn't play just miserable football. He did enough here, made enough really great throws to keep you in this football game and help to keep it interesting. But again, if you have a little bit more consistency in your running game, I think you're going to see a little bit less of the errors from the quarterback position at that point. The more that it becomes all about our passing attack, whether we win or lose, and the rushing game doesn't impact anything whatsoever because it's just a non-factor, it's very hard for offenses in this league, outside of maybe Mahomes and Allen, to show any sort of productivity when you don't have any kind of running game. And at the end of the day, he did still put up 24 points without said running game, even with those 2 interceptions. But those were 2 pretty bad interceptions for where they occurred. On the first one, Geno's throwing the pick because he sees the defender come down to the flat route, and he thinks DK is going to be open on the comeback route. The defender peels off the flat route almost right as Geno's unwinding. It's a great play by the defender. He drops back and makes the pick. It's very, very good play by him. Not a great throw by Geno. Bad throw. He's falling away. His mechanics are off on it. Not good from Geno there, but a great play by the defender as well. On the second interception, Geno thought he had a false start play. He buys in on the false start, thinks he's got a free play as he had earlier in that game, tries to take a shot up the field, comes to realize the officials didn't actually call a flag. It does look like when you go back and watch replays on that play that somebody did jump off sides for the Carolina Panther defense, but it goes uncalled. It doesn't excuse those 2 throws, but I don't think those 2 throws solely make his whole day. And again, when I come back to it, I go, if I have a quarterback who has none, 0, zip, zilch, nada, no running game to fall back on to remain kind of somewhat balanced, to keep the defenses somewhat legitimate, right? Because they'll start to squeeze those passing windows on the backside when they realize you can't run the ball, especially when they realize you can't run the ball up the middle. There are no holes to be had up there at all. I think Homer had 1 run of any like decency today. Everything else was negative or 0. Negative, 0. It's tough. It's hard to be good offensively when that is the case. It's tough to expect your quarterback to play perfectly like that when that is the case. And so, look, this goes to both sides of the ball here today. Defense didn't do really its part. Geno with the 2 interceptions. He's got to play a clean football. He can't give away the ball 2 times. He can't give away a short field, not with this defense playing as it is. But when I do come back to this, though I do give out blame in different portions here, your running game, lack of ability to that, decision-making Geno Smith, and how the defense played today, the big concern for me remains the defense. I think Geno's going to bounce back and play just fine moving into the future. I think once you get some interior linemen who aren't named Austin Blythe or Gabe Jackson, that you're going to be able to maybe create some more holes in the middle, along with getting the second-year returns from 2 rookie tackles right now who are kind of learning their way. I have some hope for that offensive line and that offense into the future. The place that I raise the alarm bells here are going to be on the defensive side of the ball. Week in and week out, you're getting smoked. Week in and week out, you're also still then giving up passing yards on top of giving up running yards. You're not stopping a whole hell of a lot. And if we look at this, it's not about a problem in the right now in this season. This season's a rebuild year. This season's a year we're trying to figure out what we're going to be in the future. We got 4 picks in the first 2 rounds of this next draft. We got money to spend. There's ways to correct and fix some things. But I keep coming back to the fact this defense slides back into its old habits, and those old habits continually having it getting burned. There was a play in this game on about a 3rd and 3. And Sam Darnold comes up and he's going to run a play action boot. And Ryan Neal's up at the line of scrimmage first to stop the run because it's a 3rd and short. So there is a chance they run the ball. So he's first up at the line of scrimmage to stop that run. He's right next to a tight end who would be theoretically his guy in coverage to take and stay on if they're trying to play to the sticks and take away those routes that would be at the sticks. So what happens instead is post snap, It's not a running play. It's a play action. Neal recognizes it's a play action, and he gets up on his horse and sprints with his back straight back the field to the end zone, where you already have Quandre Diggs dropping into depth. This opens it up for the tight end right underneath where there's nobody there. He's just wide open to go get the easy 3 yards for the first down. There's too many free and easy yards in this defense. They die too easily. They give up too easily. It all is built on the back of this bend but don't break defense philosophy that Carroll's implemented that I feel like once had its day, but's kind of maybe has seen its day at this point. Teams are willing to be patient when they weren't in 1985 or 1995 or 2005 or 2012. They're willing to be patient. They're willing to dink and dunk. They're willing to feature fly sweeps and bubble screens throughout the course of the game. They will manufacture drives and they will get their points slow and sure. They will not become impatient. And Carroll's defense is so much built on the impatience of an offense that they will not remain patient throughout the course of the game and just take what you give them. They will eventually want to stretch. They'll eventually want to press. They'll eventually want to go for that big shot. And then that's when you got them. But what happens when they don't take that big shot? Where was Sam Darnold's big shots in this day? Where was him pushing that ball up the football field? It wasn't there because he knew he didn't have to do it. And offenses aren't going to do something if you're not going to force them to leave. They're going to have success in one area. They're not just going to leave it for the sake of leaving it. They might have once done that. They're not going to do that any longer. Frustrating to see that on this defense, that you went out this offseason and you adopted a cover 2 shell defense. Coach Carroll went at the combine and interviewed at the combine and he said, you know what, guys? And I'm verbatim quoting him on this. We've been a little bit too arrogant in our ways. We've been a little bit too reticent to change in how we go about what we've done. We just kept trying to do the same old thing. He told you at the time exactly what I'm telling you at the time. The old ain't working. You got to transition to the new. You got to find a new gear here. But instead of finding the new gear, what you did this offseason is you changed from a 4-3 defense to a 3-4 defense, and that seems to be the only change that you decided you were going to make. And that's not going to be enough. And not for this year, I'm not talking about. This year will be what it's going to be. The die is cast. This will play out as it's going to play out. I'm talking about this into the future years. How do I have confidence in a defense that's not showing a willingness to change when everything around it is telling you, you need to change, you need to update, you need to evolve? I place some hope in the fact that Coach Carroll took a year to fully remove his hands from the reins, let Shane Waldron take those reins and drive this offense unfiltered. And from being able to drive this offense unfiltered, you've got an offense this year that's averaging damn near 30 points a game. So Coach Carroll was reticent on that to make that change. Maybe the same thing is going to be true here with this defense. Maybe it will take him a year of, let me make my peace with the funeral of my old defense, getting it 6 feet under, put the dirt on, right? Get the flowers on top of the casket. Okay, give me my year. I'll get through that. We'll get to next year, and then I'll allow the full changes to take place. We'll get the personnel that fits it right, and I'll make my peace with it at that point. That very well may be the case, as it was proven to be the case offensively. I hope to God it is. Because if we run back again next year and we update with better talent on that defense, yet we don't update the schematics, yet we don't really buy into becoming a cover 2 shell defense like we were going to try to do this year, hard to see us having much of a top end into the future with Coach Carroll as a coach if he will not make those changes. You lost this game at the line of scrimmage on both lines. Your defensive line got whooped. Your offensive line got whooped. No two ways about it. And when you can't handle either line of scrimmage, when you're not controlling either one, and both lines of scrimmage are getting whooped, beyond statistics, beyond quarterback play, beyond anything else, you're just probably going to lose that football game. And that certainly was the case today. This was an old school football whooping. Your Hawks got that end of it. They kept it reasonably close. They didn't just lay over. They didn't just show their belly. Love the resiliency shown today by Geno Smith, that despite those 2 interceptions, I still thought he made a lot of throws. I know I said he had his worst game, and he did, but still threw for 264 yards. Still had some throws in on those touchdown throws that were absolutely legit. The one throws to Tyler where he's got to layer that ball in with just enough touch, put it up over the top of the defender, giving Tyler enough time to get to that ball to get his feet in toe tap time. Brilliant. Beautiful pass. The throw to DK where the safety's undercutting and he's throwing a post route to the back of the end zone and puts it right up over the top of that safety. To DK, brilliant pass. And there were some really, really good throws in this game from Geno. It was not all bad. I think there was a single drop by DK, but aside from that, him and Tyler were both on it. Tyler was, again, awesome in this game. Marquise Goodwin made some really good catches out there as well. He's really settled in firmly now into that third spot. So hang in there, Hawks fans. Short week, so you don't have to grumble over this one too long. We got to turn this right back around. But it's nonetheless, at the end of the day, and just putting this in perspective as a final note, it's been a great season here. This has been so much better than any of us thought this was going to be. Everyone was telling us we were going to be in contention for the number 1 overall pick in the draft, and we ended up being in contention for the number 1 overall pick, but it was because of the fact the Denver Broncos sucked. Now, we've been way better than any of us thought we were going to be at this point in time this year, and there's a lot more encouraging to take away from this season than there is necessarily bad. But I do have some worries and concerns. That doesn't mean we put everything to bed and excuse everything. And right now, Coach Carroll, he's going to want to find an elite state to this team going into the future. If it's just to slide back into the same old defensive machinations that he rode in on in 2012 and 2013, I feel like we're going to be a little limited on our top end in the long-term future, not the short-end future, long-term future. Hopefully they bring those adjustments in. Again, they did it once on the offensive side of the ball. Maybe he can once again do it over on the defensive side of the ball, and it just takes that 2-year period for him to make his peace with that change. My name is Brandon Kay in the Seahawks Nest. Please hit the like button. Please like, but keep a smile on your face and keep the hope, my fellow Hawk fans, and don't you ever forget. Go Hawks.